All right, cool. All right, what's going on, everybody? Welcome on back to the Cinema Lords podcast. Big show for you guys today. We got a very special guest, a guy I've been a fan of basically since he started creating content. He's a Barstool personality, blogger, podcaster. He is the host and creator of My Mom's Basement, which if you're a fellow nerd, definitely go check that out. He covers a lot of the same stuff that I cover here: comic book movies, MCU, DC, Game of Thrones, Star Wars, all that good stuff. So go check that out. He is a dozen trivia champion. He's the newest member of Team Minahan for the dozen. Conor McGregor's best friend, and most importantly, a kid that once went 19 days without coming before succumbing to what I hope was a glorious wet dream. We got Mr. Bob Fox. What's going on, pal?
Not much. What's going on? Thanks for having me on the show. I'm obviously well acquainted, I would say, with the show. I know of it through the Minahan Network, Clemmer, Jeff D. Lowe, Ken Jack. So it's an honor to be invited on. I'm happy to do it.
Really appreciate it. I think we're going to have a good time. So we're going to be talking a lot of wrestling today, some WWE, WWF kind of stuff if you're me and older, some wrestling movies as well. But before we get there, I wanted to just touch on a couple of quick things. The dozen. You guys had your first dozen match, new team, you, Kirk, and Clemmer. Tough loss, but I think there was a lot of good things to take from that matchup. How did you feel about it?
It was a tough loss. It was, for me personally, it's hard to come away from that with like any great takeaways because we had a few like big flubs, especially in the movie category that we like doubled. Was like the three of us are supposed to combine heads and be the three-headed dragon on movies, especially. Yeah. But I didn't take it as the end of the world. I didn't take it as like, oh, the team is doomed. It felt like a couple bad mistakes, and if we don't make that mistake, and if we win the bonus round, it's a completely different game. I think also it was a very well played game by the other team. I think they put up like 15 points. To beat teams that put up 15 or something like that. So yeah, I didn't think it was the end of the world. I didn't think it was like a great start, obviously, but I'm not super worried about the future of the team. I think we're in a good spot still.
Yeah, I think kind of like you just said, that game could easily swung the opposite way with just one question, two questions, the movie one, obviously. But
yeah,
I think
and that was tough. The three of us just thought it was the same thing right away. As soon as we heard it, we didn't even consider other options. So maybe stuff like that, like getting back in the swing of the dozen and remembering how like Jeff D'Lo's brain works and being like, let's actually think about this for a second.
I like the team a lot. I think it's going to work out pretty well. I'm obviously going to be rooting for you guys, but you guys are doing your next match this week or no?
Yeah, our next match against Foreplay.
Okay, that'll be fun.
Yeah,
I love watching them play, especially Frankie Borelli trying to do trivia is so goddamn funny. All right, so we're gonna be watching a lot of the dozen this season. Make sure you check out Team Minahan. From there, I'm a fellow Cap guy. I know you're a big Cap guy. We just had Captain America: Brave New World, and I think it's been pretty mixed. I know that my thoughts kind of fell very similar in line with your thoughts. I reviewed the movie recently with my buddy who went with me, and I thought he put it a good way, which was there's a big year ahead for the MCU, and it'd be nice to just get something. He said he called it a leadoff single, and I was like, that is a great way to put it. We just need to get somebody on base, set the table for the year to come, because especially like recently, I think of Ant-Man and the Lost Quantumania, like that was the first project of February, and it just left a bad taste in my mouth. The whole Guardians was good, but then we had the Marvels to close it out, and it was just tough. But I thought this was a very okay start to 2025.
I agree, and I'm obviously so biased. I love the MCU. Even the worst MCU movie, I don't even like hate. I was trying to like rank and do the ratings the other day because before Thunderbolts or maybe after Thunderbolts, I'll try to do something with Clem where we like tier them or do something like that. We haven't in so many years. So there's so many more movies that we could catch up on. But I was trying to do it and I was like, The Incredible Hulk might be the worst in the MCU, like the Ed Norton one. And
definitely up there.
That I don't even hate that movie. Like there's still stuff from that I pull away and I'm like, that was okay. That was cool. I liked that. So with Brave New World, I'm way biased, but for me, like, I think at worst, it's a leadoff walk. Like someone's on base at the very least. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't think that was an out. And a lot of people did think it was an out. And that surprised me. Like, I didn't think this was horrible by any means. I feel like, especially if you're a fan of the MCU, gave you just enough with the adamantium mentions, them actually acknowledging the celestial in the ocean, pushing things forward. Harrison Ford was great in it. I feel like that's like undeniable. Even that bad reviews are like, at least Harrison Ford was giving it a go. It gave us just enough to like get us to the next project in the phase. I guess it's Daredevil Born Again, and it'll be Thunderbolts in the movie category. but it definitely left me like wanting a little more, especially like the post-credit scene. I felt like could have been so much better leading into the Avengers. Like we have an Avengers movie coming up. How about we have them meet and give us like a real concrete tease into that? So it was like it's an interesting. I feel like it's in such a middle ground of like I left being like we kind of dodged a bullet that probably could have been a lot worse based on everything we heard from the reshoots. I didn't think it was bad. I actually thought it was like pretty good. I enjoyed it. Like it was completely fine for me in the MCU. At the same time, when you compare it to like the 3 previous Captain America movies or some of the highlights of Marvel's past, it doesn't compare, obviously. But yeah, I agree with you. Marvel's not in a bad like tanking spot at all. I also think the Thunderbolts and the Fantastic Four movies are going to be better than this movie. I have a lot of faith that both of them will be improvements. I think Thunderbolts is going to be a little better, and I think Fantastic Four is going to be awesome.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Harrison Ford, he was great. We definitely could have used some more Red Hulk in that movie. It stunk that we only got like maybe 10 minutes tops with him. Because it was.
Especially you saved them for the end. It was like in the movie, it was played as if that was like a big tease. We all knew it from the trailers.
Yep.
So it was like, if you're going to give us 5 minutes of Red Hulk at the end, don't show it in the trailers. If you're going to give us Red Hulk in the trailers, give us at least another scene of him. You know, I agree with that. I like the scenes where he's like about to Hulk out on the ship. Or
that was good.
He's grabbing the pipes, like his eyes are turning red. That stuff was good. Anything between him and Anthony Mackie, I thought was great too. When he's in the room and he calls Sam son, he's like, let me handle this, son. And he's walking out like, you don't fucking call me son. Like all that, their dynamic was great. I liked all that.
Yeah, no, it was good. That was, I said the missing of more time with the Red Hulk was good. I'll tell you this too. Watching Red Hulk really made me miss like the real Hulk. I hate
like Hulk
Smart
smashing.
Hulk. Yeah, Smart Hulk is just one of the worst decisions in my opinion as far as Marvel goes. I hate Smart Hulk, and it was nice to just get the like you said the smashing fucking crazy Hulk back. It was good.
I think I liked Smart Hulk in Endgame. Like I thought the whole thing with him being like, I view that as an absolute win. Like I think that's funny and stuff. But I do agree, like we're at the point now where I'm ready for Hulk to come back and do Bruce Banner and Hulk. Yeah. We don't need to have Smart Hulk be the guy. It's almost as if they took like Fat Thor and they were like, all right, he's always fat now. It's like, no, that was a fun thing to do for a movie, but let's go back to what we know.
That's a good call. I like that comparison. I hope that actually comes through because we did kind of see him just for a minute in She-Hulk and he was still the same thing, but
he was still just Smart Hulk. Yeah.
Yeah. I want a freaking Ragnarok Hulk back. That's like the best version of Hulk for me. I love him in that.
I just finished the comic that was like mostly based on the Planet Hulk comic.
Yeah.
My coworker Jake just lent it to me and I finished it. And it was awesome. Like seeing how much they actually pulled from the comic for Ragnarok, seeing Korg and Meek being different, but also still awesome and funny. It was really cool. Would definitely recommend it.
Okay. The comic book that you guy that you guys have on a lot is really good. He's very
Jose. Jose Youngs.
Yes.
He's a Boston guy as well, or a New England guy. He's a big Red Sox fan.
Nice.
But yeah, he covers MMA and is just an absolute comic encyclopedia. You got a question, I text him all the time and he has the answer just off the top of his brain. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, he's always bringing it with a bunch of information. You're definitely right too about the end credit scene, especially because the asking of Sam to set up the Avengers, I feel like was a pretty like big moment in this movie.
Yeah. And it was cool too.
Yeah,
like,
it was.
Even just the mention of like we got to reform the Avengers, like kind of gave me chills. It was kind of like,
definitely,
oh shit, here we go again. We're going back into a team movie, and then they didn't do anything with it. And I think there was even a quote from the show, from the director, someone afterwards. They were like, oh yeah, what's referenced in the post-credit scene was the Illuminati, because in one point of the script that was going to be in there. It's like, oh, I didn't get that at all. When he said like threats are coming, it was such a vague, like I don't know. I figured like multiverse, Secret Wars, or whatever. Like. For it to be the Illuminati, which then I'm like, okay, if you bring the Illuminati into Doomsday and Secret Wars, that sounds cool to me. Yeah. So maybe that's where they're going, but like, give us a little more than they're coming. And he's like, you think you're the only one from this world? It's like, no, he just fought a multiversal Thanos a couple years ago. Like Anthony Mackie, Sam Wilson has seen people from other worlds. So that the whole thing confused me.
Yeah, I thought they did a good job of addressing too. Like it's a big question as far as how is Sam going to be able to fight these beings, like, like a Thanos or whatever. Giving them the Wakandan tech, I feel like that was like a really good answer to that. I was like, all right, that makes much more sense now.
That was cool.
Like plausibility. Yeah.
Creative action, creative use of the wings and the, like you said,
the action scenes were great.
Yes, very good. When he's surfing on the missile and Red Wing's holding the shield behind him, like that stuff is straight pulled from a comic book page, and it's so awesome. I liked all of that stuff.
And that's when
even
the
like
MCU's going good in scenes like that. That's when
yeah.
MCU's rolling right there.
And even the super serum stuff, I go back and forth. Like, yeah, it's cool that he could be Captain America without super soldier serum. At the same time, it didn't seem like there were any side effects for Chris Evans, Captain America, Steve Rogers. Maybe there were for John Walker. He got like roid rage when he took it, but that might have been like off market, whatever. The actual steroids he might have taken, thinking of super serum.
Over the counter.
Yeah. So it's like there were moments in this movie where I'm like, at the end when he's like, damn, Bucky was right. I should have taken that serum. It's like, but why don't you? At this point, like you could take it, dude. But it was played funny when Isaiah Bradley jumps out the window and he goes to jump. He's like, shit. And he just has to like run down the stairs. Isaiah Bradley, I also loved. I would have loved more of him in the movie. Every scene with him, I thought was the most like heartbreaking, even the most emotional moment of the movie. I thought was when he's arrested and he keeps being like, watch my suit, because it's the suit he got married in. And he has that like memory like that, broke my heart. I would have liked more of him. I would have liked to see him on screen with Harrison Ford. I feel like the two of them would have gone back and forth in such a good way.
Yeah, he was really like a big part of the opening, say half hour. And then from there, he only had like that one or two scenes really when Mackie goes to visit him in jail. And then kind of the end when he gets out of jail.
Yeah. I would have liked more of that, trying to prove his innocence over just prove who did it, I guess.
Yeah, it definitely tried to do a little bit of that espionage kind of black with the soldier kind of thing that they did, but definitely didn't hit quite the same way. But you could see that's what they were trying to go for.
Yeah, even in the trailers, you could see that. And like my only other like critique and a kind of a nitpick, love Giancarlo Esposito. It didn't really feel like they gave him anything to do in this movie.
Totally agree.
Very forgettable.
Completely wasted. Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought like the two scenes he had like were cool though. Like the scene where he
the ambush was cool.
Yeah. I thought that was
sure.
Like, just not enough screen time.
It felt like so obviously added in reshoots. Like the scene in the desert where he goes to talk to him. It was such a like weird off the map location, two people on screen at once. It's like, oh, this got added in reshoots. And you could tell that the president's assistant, her role was like completely cut. At one point, she's like wearing a super suit under a jacket. I'm like, why does she need a super suit? Isn't she a Secret Service agent? But I guess she was a big part of the movie before they went back and did all the reshoots.
Yeah, honestly, I thought bringing a Black Widow into it, that was a nice little. I liked that touch.
Yeah, that was. They could have gone more into that. I think they should have combined, and this isn't my original thought. I saw someone tweet this. They should have combined Sam Wilson's secret agent friend, who was trying to give him intel, trying to be on his side, with Ross's assistant or whoever you may call her. If they would have combined those two characters into one character, where it's like she really feels conflicted between Ross and Sam and her friend, but her boss, I feel like that could have been cooler.
Yeah, there's more to build on there. Kind of flush out the character a little bit more. That's a good.
Even
idea.
Sam's friend, like they didn't really give a lot to do in that movie. Like she was a fine character. I thought the performance was fine, but like she didn't have anything to do.
Yeah, I thought that might have been a little like romantic involvement there, but they kind of just skipped over that too. So I kind of just threw that idea out.
Yeah.
Before we get into the wrestling stuff, actually, we're still on MC. Have you seen the Daredevil show on Netflix or no?
Okay, so I'm making my way through it right now. I'm grinding through it like deadline because I put it off for so many years. I didn't watch it when it was on, and I don't know why, because this is right up my alley, obviously. Yeah. And then when people would tell me I have to watch it, I'd be like, but I'm watching Moon Knight right now, or I'm watching this right now. And I just had shows. So now that it's like crunch time, Born Again is about to come back. I went back, started rewatching all of it. Towards the beginning of season 3 right now. I just finished season 2 this weekend, and I'm going to do a video before Born Again, kind of recapping everything. Being like, if you didn't see any of this, here's everything you need to know before you start Daredevil Born Again. Because I figure there's probably a lot of like stoolies that are just going into this blind. Yeah. But I'm really, really enjoying Daredevil. And it's such a like almost bittersweet watch because I'm like, man, I wish I was in this from the jump because everyone was telling me it was amazing, and it lives up to the hype. It is amazing. John Bernthal's the Punisher, Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin. Like, it's so good.
So that's actually one of my biggest problems, I guess I would say, with that show or the MCU is Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin.
You didn't like him?
No, and I know everybody universally. I know everybody loves it, and I cannot buy it. Part of it is like the way he has like a very like almost like a whisper when he talks. Like he doesn't talk like a guy that I should be intimidated by.
No, he does have a weird like cadence and tone of voice when he talks for sure.
Yeah, and then like I was thinking, like a lot of people kept saying like they want street level Spider-Man. They want street level Spider-Man
Yes.
where he's kind of going against the Kingpin and all that. And I'm like, Kate Bishop was a hero for about 3 weeks, and she ended up getting the best of Kingpin in that fight at the end of the day.
That's a
How,
decent point.
how is he? Tom Holland would have this guy webbed up in a ball for the police in 30 seconds.
You might be right about that. I saw a quote from D'Onofrio that said, after Born Again, he's like, yeah, my size has gone up in Born Again, and he's like, and it's gonna have to get even bigger from here. So I want him to get to that point where he almost looks goofy how big he is, like that Into the Spider-Verse, like just a little ball head on a giant suit. But yeah, maybe they gotta bulk him up and give him the fucking super soldier serum or something. He gets a black market version, because you are right. Like Kate Bishop just hit him with a couple of those fancy arrows, blew him up. Yep. But then he also has crazy abilities where when I was writing my script for this recap I'm doing, I was recapping Hawkeye and Echo and stuff. I'm like, yeah, at the end of Hawkeye, he gets shot in the face point blank by his niece. And then in Echo, he shows up in an eye patch that he takes off after like the second episode. He doesn't even need the eye patch for the whole show. It was like very quickly, like, all right, an eye for an eye, literally. He's like, I killed your dad. You shot me in the face point blank. We're even. So I don't know. He is basically like super powered. Echo.
Yeah, I had a tough time with Echo.
It was not great. It was like another. I feel like the story of a lot of projects this phase where they have moments and scenes where you're like, all right, I could see why you made this because you had something there. But every time they went into the ancestral stuff and they would cut back to her ancestors doing the freaky magic and all of that, I didn't need. It's like, okay, Echo is a character literally built like Daredevil to be a street level grounded. You don't need superpowers. It's cool enough that she's got a prosthetic leg and she's deaf and she's kicking ass. Like, just make it that. I even liked like her going back to Oklahoma and being on the run from Kingpin. Remember that being cool? But yeah, by the finale, they're at the powwow and she's doing the crazy punches and her grandma's punching goons in the face. It was just like, oh, come on.
I wouldn't be surprised if she found her way into the new Daredevil show. I could see her wiggling.
I could definitely see that because Daredevil shows up in her show for a quick second. And that was that annoyed me a little bit because he shows up just to come to a draw with her and leave. It was just like they used him to show us Echo can hold her own. It's like, you didn't need that. You could have used other characters and stuff.
Yeah.
I can't believe they even gave her own show after Hawkeye. Like, she was a good character in Hawkeye, but nobody was clamoring for an Echo solo series.
Couldn't agree more. I feel like they're trying to do that. The same thing with like Agatha, which I actually thought Agatha ended up being like pretty okay. I enjoyed it, but like that was the kind of the same thing. I was like, who was asking for an Agatha TV?
That felt like they were just like, oh, the song that was in WandaVision was such a viral hit. Let's capitalize on that. But it took them like 3 years to put the show out. Like, that's the other thing is their output is so delayed now. It's like, who even remembers the viral Agatha All Along song? But I do agree with you. I didn't think that was like a show made for me. But by the end of it, I was like, all right, that was decent. I could see being like if you're a big Hocus Pocus type fan, I could see that show really being for you. Like when they explain the Billy death or whatever and how the soul went into the body, like that shit, I was like, all right, I could fuck with this a little bit. This feels like MCU again.
Yeah, the musical episode when they're all like in the band, I fucking love. That was my favorite episode by far. I thought that episode was awesome.
That was cool. And I appreciated as a crappy musician myself, I always am watching where their fingers are on the frets, or if the drummer's hitting the hi-hat and you hear a cymbal sound. I really locked in and appreciated Aubrey Plaza's drumming because I was like, she's obviously not drumming on the track, but she's hitting what she's supposed to be. She's rock banding it, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like, that's what I really took from that episode. I was like, all right, I appreciate that.
Well, that's pretty.
She was good too. Just her playing Death was cool. That was like at the end when you see her with the skeletal face and stuff. That was sick.
Yep, that was. No, I thought I was very pleasantly surprised. I didn't like love it, but I was like, all right, way better than I anticipated it being.
I thought it would be a train wreck, and it was not a train wreck. It was complete at worst, kind of like Captain America. I would say it was fine at worst.
There's actually, I guess, sort of along the same lines. It's coming this summer that I am very excited for is Ironheart because I loved Riri Williams in the Black Panther Wakanda Forever movie.
Yeah,
so I'm very interested to get more of her background. I also know it's supposed to like be like a lot of information about Tony Stark too, and like his Iron Man suit. So I think that'll be cool. I'm excited for that one.
That sounds cool to me. The only thing I worry about that one, because I'm under the impression, I'm pretty sure they wrapped the whole filming of that show in like 2022. And they have since gone back and done the reshoot thing and gone back and back and back. And that worries me. That's another one, though, where people are saying maybe Mephisto, which that name's been coming up for years now in the MCU, but people are swearing like this might actually be the Mephisto show. So that's like, if you give us Mephisto, who is the devil, all right, I'm in immediately. Like, that sounds metal to me. I'm in.
That'll be awesome. No, for sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of metal and your musicians, I was at the House of Blues for Pop Punk. It was a great time.
Oh, were you? Those years ago?
Oh,
holy crap. We look back at that fondly, but also not fondly, because the thing I remember the most is the Patriots had just lost to the Eagles in the Super Bowl. Someone threw a drink on stage and Roan put on a Philly accent. It was like, you guys are throwing like Tom Brady out there. And then it was just like, it was like out of a movie when you see like the firing arrows come in. We were ducking and diving. I remember I was trying to like fight a guy in the crowd that threw a full drink at Roan. I was trying to kick a drink out of the way of PFT's amp. It was such a train wreck. And then we watched the videos back and we're like, I don't know. It seemed like it was a fun time for the crowd.
I got to do
a redemption show there. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. The dozen championships are supposed to be in Boston.
True. The dozen champion. We did half a redemption when we went back for the Barstool 20th anniversary show. They had Pup Punk as the house band. So we learned like 40 songs going into that night, but only the first 15 seconds of each song. So we had this long list of, Big T walks on stage. We went into Tennessee Whiskey. Kirk definitely had a song. I forget what song. Ryan Whitney, we played Mana Mana from the Muppets because he calls everyone a Muppet. Like, we had and it was so much fun to put together for us to be like, what song can we assign to which person and how can we learn 15 seconds of it? We had like one practice before the show, and then we just we winged it when we were on stage. It was great. Frankie forgot a dress shirt, so I wound up, I think, playing in like a blazer but no shirt. It was a mess, but it was fun.
Oh shit, that's great. I think that's pretty much all I had for MCU stuff, unless you had anything else you wanted to mention. But
I don't think so. I've been just in the Daredevil grind, really trying to catch. And God bless my fiance, because I started it with her. So now every night she's like, oh, what do you want to watch? And I'm like, we actually have to do 3 episodes of Daredevil a night to finish by. And she's like, all right, bring on Elektra, bring on the hand.
Yeah. Congratulations on the engagement, by the way, too.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
The moment of you asking Clem to be a best man, a groomsman, was very wholesome. That was one of those moments. Oh shit, that's beautiful, man.
I knew I would ask Clem, and I knew I would save it for the podcast, because I feel like over the years we've had like 400 episodes at this point. That's a lot of audio. I feel like most of our conversations have happened on mic, so I was like, might as well have that one happen on mic as well. Yeah,
no, that was awesome. Great moment.
Thanks.
All right, so let's get into some wrestling stuff. Like I said, I don't get to talk much wrestling these days, so I'm excited to do some. Let's just start right at the beginning. I know I've heard you talking a lot about your older brother and how he kind of got you interested in a lot of his hobbies, and they kind of took into your hobbies as well. Is this another example of that?
Completely, 100%. Older brother was the biggest Ultimate Warrior fan of all time. Nice. WrestleMania 6 was his absolute glory day. Like, that is his Super Bowl championship. When he looks back he's not a sports guy. When he looks back at the titles he's won as a fan, WrestleMania 6 is the night. So he got me into it from such an early age that I genuinely don't really it's kind of hazy. I don't remember this was the first time I ever watched wrestling, but the first thing I remember, I could actually grab a little prop for you.
Absolutely.
So this was the first thing I ever remember watching. Is a VHS tape, the WWF's most unusual matches. And this was one of the only things from my basement that I saved in Hurricane Sandy. Because I was this was when my basement was flooding, 2012. We got 6 feet of water. I was like, this was what introduced me to wrestling. So it's funny when you look at the back, the things that came on WWF's most unusual matches, a lethal ladder match, the first ladder match in the history of the WWF, between Bret the Hitman Hart and Shawn Michaels for the IC title. Then you've got the infamous $10,000 match, 1, 2, 3 Kid versus Razor Ramon.
Yep.
What a great, you can't pick a better underdog story to get a little kid interested in wrestling. True. Survivor Series 93, the 4 Doinks versus Bam Bam and the Head Shrinkers and Bastion Booger. And then you've got a fearless lumberjack match. Hacksaw Jim Duggan versus Shawn Michaels. So this is the first like exposure I ever remember to wrestling. And my first like memory that I can conjure up is that ladder match between Shawn and Brett. I remember Shawn's about to grab the titles, or the title, just the IC title. Brett tips the ladder and Shawn hits the crotch on the ropes, the classic Shawn spot. And I remember that being like, oh my God, he tipped the ladder perfectly for a nut shot. This is perfect. So like my first favorites were Ultimate Warrior because of my brother, Bret Hart because of that match, Hulk Hogan, even though he was Warrior's rival. Like, what kid didn't love Hulk Hogan? I think in my preschool yearbook, you listed like 5 things you like, and I had Hulk Hogan number 1 before like my family. It was like Hulk Hogan, and then like brother, sister, mom, dad. Like, so it was completely brother influenced all the way through my life. Still to this day, my brother this year has taken his 10-year-old to WrestleMania for the first year. Nice. So it's like I take my nephew. We went to SummerSlam a few years ago in Detroit. It's such a like family thing for us in such a great way. We went to, I don't even know how many shows my brother took me to growing up. House shows, real shows, pay-per-views, Raw, SmackDown, dozens, absolutely dozens. At this point, I've been to over 100, I bet.
That's crazy. So actually, I kind of wanted to ask about that. Like, you just mentioned a few, but what's like, if you had to pick one live event, what's the one that fucking stands out to you the most?
Oh, great question. I've been to a lot of WrestleManias at this point. I've been very lucky with Barstool to go to a lot of WrestleManias. The last WrestleMania 40, the main event, being in the building for John Cena runs out, The Rock runs out, The Undertaker, getting all of those, that was crazy. But my personal favorite was WrestleMania 31, which was before I was even at Barstool. I'm a huge Daniel Bryan fan. He's like,
okay,
Bryan Danielson, Daniel Bryan, whatever you want to say. He would probably be like my number 1 all time. I followed his career pretty much from the moment he got signed. I can't be like a complete hipster and be like, I followed him in Ring of Honor. But when he got signed in 2009, I remember going on wrestling forums and people were like, either saying he's going to be the greatest thing that ever happened to WWE, or like the WWE is going to ruin him and it's going to be the least, like my least favorite thing that ever happened to WWE. Like people were so worried that they would ruin this guy. And I saw a picture of him and was kind of like, I don't know, he seems like a tiny guy. He didn't have the beard at that point. He didn't really have like a look. I was like, this is the guy that's going to be the savior of WWE. So I started looking into him and I fell in love with his wrestling style right away. Like the technical, but also super hard hitting style. Obviously very like Dean Malenko influence, Fit Finlay influence. I thought it was awesome. And the way he worked in underdog style with bigger guys. So WrestleMania 30, having followed him since 2009, was like, that was my Super Bowl. That was my Ultimate Warrior moment where I was like part of the yes movement, begging them to put him in the main event. Right. I was such a mark for the entire thing. Like thought I was jaded, smart mark. And then Daniel Bryan comes out and I went absolutely berserk. So when he won, my mom saw how like crazy into wrestling I was that year specifically. And she promised me that WrestleMania night, she goes, I'll take you next year. And that wasn't like,
that's cool.
We were never like struggling, but we were never in the position where it's just like, I'll take you to WrestleMania next year.
Okay, I got you.
What? You're taking me to WrestleMania? And I had been to WrestleMania at MetLife 29, but it was also my mom like worked there and was able to get like face value tickets and whatnot. So I was like, this is crazy. So the whole experience of my mom, not a wrestling fan, flying across the country to California with me and doing the whole week. We did NXT the Saturday night, the Hall of Fame, you know, whatever it was. And she came to all these events with me. I have like pictures of my mom, like drinking a glass of wine at NXT, the house show, and being there for WrestleMania, kicking off with Daniel Bryan winning the IC title in a great ladder match. You get Sting versus Triple H, which I know it's a weird watch now. I swear in the arena, in the building that night, when the NWO and DX comes out, it was like an earlier version of that WrestleMania 40 match. And then the main event that everyone was shitting on going into it. It was Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns, the year Roman won the Royal Rumble for the first time. Wound up being the coolest environment I've ever been in for a wrestling match because people were so anti-Roman Reigns. It felt hostile. He still walked through the crowd. People were like throwing shit. And then Rollins, his music hitting, running out, heist of the century. It was like a finish none of us even saw coming. None of us knew that could happen. And it left us leaving that building so happy and like, oh my God, WWE is amazing. We thought we were either leaving with Roman Reigns winning, and nobody wanted that at the time, or Brock Lesnar retaining. And nobody wanted that at the time either. We were like, we're going to make our voices heard and show the WWE how much we hate this main event. And it wound up being like one of the best live matches I've ever seen with the greatest finish imaginable. So I would say of all the shows I've been to, I know that was super long-winded. I'm sorry.
No,
WrestleMania 31 was my personal favorite. And I got the worst sunburn of my life that night. The whole day we thought the sun was going to go down. It didn't go down till the main event.
Yeah, that one was outdoors, right?
Yeah, it was at Levi Stadium, which is where the Super Bowl will be next year. So if you're going to the Super Bowl, I know the weather will be maybe a little different in February that time of year, but sunscreen, pack it just in case.
I have not been fortunate enough to go to any pay-per-views, but I marked them down. It's so cool that you can, like, if you have like events or a match, you can go and just find like exactly it's pretty cool.
I tried to do that recently, like on Cage Match or whatever, and really list them all out. Yeah.
So I had two that really stood out to me. The first one, I was at Raw August 14th, 2000. And in Providence, this was a big one for two reasons that stood out to me. The first one was Mick Foley announced the first ever TLC match, which was
for WrestleMania 17, like leading into that. Yeah.
Yep. And even when he said it, like everybody in the audience, we all like looked around to one another and was like, do you know what a TLC match is? Do you know what a TLC match? And then he like does the delay and he's like,
was that at the dunk? Would that be? Or no? Yeah.
So that was a big one. And that same night too, there was a funny thing where I don't even think it was an actual match, but Kane and Undertaker were just having like a moment in the ring, and obviously it went bad. And Undertaker choke slams Kane in like the corner, and no one thinks anything of it. It's like totally normal. And then he kind of like almost walks around the ring, sort of like in a circle, and then picks Kane up and literally drags him to the other corner of the ring, choke slams him again, and Kane goes straight through the ring.
Oh, you hit the wrong corner, you think?
Yeah, it was very much like he's looking around for the right spot now.
Like, oh, fuck, where did they put that trap door? Yeah.
So that was very funny. And then the second one was during either my first or second favorite storyline when I was watching. So the first one is definitely it led up to the 6-man Hell in the Cell match at Armageddon 2000.
Classic.
But the Stone Cold being ran over. Turns out it's Triple H and Rikishi. The Rock and Rikishi are cousins. That was like a huge one for me. And then the second one was the Invasion when WCW and ECW became the Alliance. So this was like right then in the middle of that. This was July 16th, 2001. Same thing at the Dunk. And this was the first night that Stone Cold came back. It was
so you got a huge,
it was crazy, Robbie. It was Undertaker and Kane were fighting against Diamond Dallas Page and Rhino in a 2-on-2 match to end the night. And next thing you know, like everybody from the Alliance is in the ring, everybody in the WWE is in the ring. It's just like a chaotic brawl. They're both like fighting backstage, and it goes like the Jumbotron pans, and it's like the parking lot. You just see a big truck pull up. It's like, what the fuck? And Stone Cold gets out, and it was probably the loudest thing I think I've ever heard.
I know this moment like the back of my hand because I've watched it so many times. As a wrestling fan, I'm sure you do the same thing. You just look up clips that have the biggest pops over and over and over again. And this is one of those moments where he starts beating people up on the way to the ring, and you see it on the Jumbotron, and you're just waiting. It's like they're building the anticipation for the glass to shatter. When it does, it's the roof comes off the Dunk. It's awesome. The fact that you were there for that's awesome.
Yeah. That was a big one. And like, it's like these things stand out in my memory. Like I remember them real clear. And then I go and I look them up and I see the dates. I'm like, damn, I was like 9 years old for that. I would have definitely said I was like 12 or 13.
And I'm sure 9-year-old was double middle fingers in the air.
Oh yeah.
That was me. I went to SummerSlam 07. I was also 9 in 07. And that was the first ever pay-per-view match between John Cena and Randy Orton. Okay. And that was also, they had a beer drinking contest between Matt Hardy and MVP. And we all knew what that meant. Matt Hardy was like, I got a replacement that's going to outdrink me. Glass shatter. 9 years old. I looked to my brother. He's like, yeah, you could do it. Immediately. Middle fingers in the air, you know. That was a great one. SummerSlam 07 was my first pay-per-view. And my favorite at that point was Rey Mysterio. Still one of my all-time favorites. I tend to lean towards the underdog tiny guy wrestler. And he came back as the Silver Surfer that night. So to combine comic books and that, I thought he was only doing superheroes for WrestleManias at the time. That was awesome. I was there for the first Shield versus Evolution match,
Okay.
where Rollins does the crazy dive off the crowd, the balcony and stuff. That was also the night WLC happened. Wasn't there for TLC, but I was there for WLC. You know, that was legendary match. That was a good one. And I was there for Austin versus Kevin Owens. And that was
nice.
friggin' insane because me and Kevin Owens have gotten pretty close over the years. I used to design merch for him before he was in the WWE. I was in high school just looking for free tickets to shows, basically.
Yeah.
So to see him, he's the best guy. Every good word you've ever heard about him is true, except kayfabe, you know. But to see him get to main event WrestleMania against his favorite wrestler of all time in his favorite wrestler's home state, and them to put on a better match than anyone thought they were going to put on. Austin's taking suplexes on concrete. They're doing like he's driving Kevin up the ramp on his ATV, like they're in the video game or something. Everything about that was like surreal.
I would say that he's probably my favorite wrestler, like post. Say like basically the end of the Attitude Era. That like the Attitude Era was really like that's when I was like at my peak. Like I wouldn't miss a thing. I'd say the last like 10 years I've turned more into just like a pay-per-view guy, and I'll kind of like keep track of like little beefs like on Twitter or stuff like that. But like I can't even remember the last time I actually like sat down and watched Raw. It's been a long time.
Raw's been all right since SmackDown went to 3 hours. I got to say it's been a drag to get through. It's been a real drag to this, and I can't do it every week either. It's like I'll record it and I'll skim through and I'll stop at the matches, the segments I want to watch, or like you said, I'll follow along on Twitter. If something big happens, they'll usually be pretty quick to post the clip. But yeah, 3 hours is, I think they're in a good spot with Raw now on Netflix where they could make the show last as long as they want. So a lot of the nights it's been 2 hours, 20 minutes, 2 hours, 30 minutes. It's like, don't just try to stretch it out. Just give us what we need for, you know, advancing the storyline to next week.
I do think that the Netflix deal is like very interesting. Like I hope that they kind of tweak it because they've obviously gone like very targeting kids heavy for, I don't know, whatever, like 10, 15 years or so. I would like them to kind of try and find more of a middle ground.
I feel like it's gotten a little better, like speaking like 10, 15 years wise. I feel like it's gotten better in the last like 2 or 3.
Okay.
Like I do think AEW gave them like a kick in the ass in a way where AEW provided a good alternative and was never competition in the sense that they weren't like competing ratings or money wise. But I do feel like it made them be like, all right. And also Vince leaving is a huge factor. Triple H loves wrestling. Vince loves the entertainment, the sports entertainment. I think leaning back into like, this is a wrestling show. Wrestling fans like wrestling. Let's not treat wrestling like it's a dirty word that you're not allowed to say on television and be like, no, it's all about, you know, let's do 40-minute opening segments. And they were doing crazy shit. It's like you go to a wrestling show, you want to see a wrestling match, and the segments are great too, but you want to see some fucking stunners. You want to see some finishers get delivered. It doesn't always have to, like the Rock promo he had on SmackDown. Did you see any of that with Cody?
I did watch a lot of that because, if it was this week, no.
Oh my God. So The Rock came back and he cut, it was like this 30-minute promo, and he's got really no limits on his time. Understandably, he's The Rock, his TKO, whatever. But he starts it off announcing WrestleMania is going to be in New Orleans, and he's happy and smiling with the crowd. And then he says, I'm going to smack the syphilis off your face. And he turns on the crowd. And then he kind of turns back and he's like, Cody ruined the greatest match in WrestleMania history, and I stepped down for it. I think Meltzer came out and said someone from WWE said he flipped heel face more times in one segment than the Big Show did in his whole career. It was so bizarre. And it was like the epitome of what we're saying, where it's like, this isn't what wrestling fans want to eat. You're The Rock. And this isn't even what wrestling fans came for. It was weird.
That's great. Speaking of Triple H, that's my guy. That's my number one. I've loved Oh yeah. Like DX was so big and like influential in bad ways at a time of my youth where like it was just throwing up the suck it to everybody. I have no idea what the fuck it means, but
I got a good story about that because DX was my favorite as well, but the second iteration of DX, the 2006 DX, because that was when I'm growing up. So I see Shawn Michaels do the suck it at WrestleMania 22, and my brother immediately is like, oh my God, they're teasing DX. Are they going to reform DX against Vince? I'm like, what's DX? I remember he went right out to FYE and he bought me like the DX DVD that they had put out at the time or whatever, compilation of all the stuff. So he's telling me this was the coolest thing when I was a kid. as an 8, 9-year-old, I'm like, okay, this must be the coolest thing when I'm a kid too. So I go all in. Shawn Michaels at this point is my favorite. So that Halloween, I was Shawn Michaels. My best friend was Triple H. We did all the poses, muscle suits. I had my mom draw on the Shawn Michaels tattoo. But I was never allowed to get a shirt that said "Suck It." So I got like the shirt that said World Tour or the shirt that had 2 of them on it. But if it said "Suck It," Mama Fox was like, no, you ain't going to be that kid. You're not wearing a "Suck It" shirt to school. So eventually they put out a shirt, you might remember this, that says Vince loves, and has a rooster pointing to himself.
Oh, yes. I do remember that.
And I see the shirt and I'm like, finally, a shirt that doesn't say "Suck It." It's appropriate. So at a family party, I walk up to my mom in front of the whole family. I'm like, hey, I could finally get a DX shirt. It doesn't say "Suck It." She goes, what does it say? He says, it's totally safe for school. It says Vince loves cock. And she, like, her jaw hit the ground, her eyes popped out of her head like a cartoon character. And she could tell that I did not know what that meant instantly. Like, she knew, she wasn't mad at me. She was just like, shh, shh. That is way worse than "Suck It." We are not going to say that. In my mind, I think I was probably 7 or 8. I thought that meant Vince is a chicken. I thought, like, you love chickens because you're a chicken. You're running away from us all the time. You're such a chicken. So I just like right in front of the whole family. It was like record scratch. Everyone turned around. I was like, it's totally cool. It says Vince loves cock. Hearing an 8-year-old say cock was
I was going to say, for 8-year-old thinking, that's pretty, like, that's a reasonable line of thinking, though.
I was totally like, yeah, they call him a coward. He's a chicken. It's a chicken on the shirt. It must be a female chicken. It must be like, yeah, he's a chicken. He loves other chickens. Like, I was so not understanding what was going on. But yeah, and then when I turned 18 and moved out, I immediately bought a "Suck It" shirt and was like, sorry, I gotta do it. Now I'm an adult. I could do it.
Some kids go out and get a tattoo. Some kids buy a pack of cigarettes.
Like, I understand. I knew it was coming. And a funny wrinkle to cap that story, Shawn Michaels was also my mom's favorite wrestler, in that when she would watch with my brother in like the 90s, Sensational Sherry Shawn, she would always tease my brother and be like, oh, he's cute. And my brother would be like, he's a heel. Don't say that. So she would also do the same thing with me growing up. She'd be like, ooh, the Heartbreak Kid. That's my guy. So when I got to interview Shawn Michaels via Zoom, I had him record a message for her. And it was a complete full circle. He's like, yep, Mrs. Fox, thank you very much for supporting all over the years. And yep, sorry about all the suckets. It was great. Perfectly HBK.
Oh, man, I love Shawn Michaels, too. Triple H, Shawn Michaels. Like, all the Attitude Era was so, like, I feel like I couldn't, like, dislike anybody. Like, I loved Triple H, and he was obviously always feuding with, like, Austin and The Rock. But it's like, I fucking loved Austin and The Rock, too.
Any Raw from the Attitude Era, and you look at who was in the main event, and you're like, yeah, that's a dream match. It's like, oh, the main event on a random Raw was Stone Cold versus The Undertaker versus Kane. It's like, that was just on a Raw. And it happens, I guess, with every generation, too, because I saw someone post recently, like, random Raw in 06 was Edge versus Randy Orton versus Shawn Michaels. But looking back, it's like, it is crazy to see that. Are we going to think that about this era in 10, 15 years? I don't know.
So actually, that's kind of like a big thing, too, that I'd like to get your opinion on, because you are a few years younger than me. So I'm sure you view it very differently. I like Rey Mysterio, too. Small guy. Think he's awesome. High flyer. I grew up watching, say, the Hardy Boys, Edge and Christian, the Dudley Boys. And like the tag team, like that was when tag team, I feel like was really like at a pinnacle too. Like they were thriving. But like I watch all those guys, especially like I think about the Hardys, and they like struggled to win the tag team titles from those other two teams. Like they had a hard time doing it. And then I'm watching, like, you know, however many years later, and I'm watching Jeff Hardy fight against like Triple H for the World Heavyweight title. I'm seeing Edge as like a however many time World Heavyweight champion now. And like I have like a hard time like wrapping my brain around. I do. I really do.
That's funny because it is my era. So I never had like a hard time with that stuff. Me watching the Hardys struggling to win the titles or all those TLC matches was all on DVD compilations, like the ladder match compilation. And my like first exposure to Edge and Mysterio and stuff was like the SmackDown 6 era, when like Heyman took over for SmackDown with Stephanie and they brought in like all of that. That was the first time I could remember seeing Edge. My first exposure to Christian, he was already a solo wrestler. I remember in SmackDown Shut Your Mouth, the video game, when he had like the almost like opera theme.
Didn't he go on to win a few world championships too?
Yes, in 2011, he had a great World Heavyweight Championship run, and him and Randy Orton had such a good feud where he won the World Heavyweight Championship with Edge ringside right after Edge retired, and it was such a feel-good moment. And he immediately turned and became this shit heel. He like won a match by DQ because he spit in Randy Orton's face and made Randy Orton just snap and like kick him in the nuts. Like there were some good bits, and he even has a great match against Orton on the Money in the Bank 2011 pay-per-view, which goes super forgotten because that's the night that CM Punk walked out with the title and beat John Cena in like one of the best matches of the modern era. So everyone forgets the Christian Orton match, but yeah, as far as those guys being like world title contenders, like that was never a hurdle to get over in my mind because they always were kind of just that level. And oh my God, I hated Edge as a kid. Like there was every morning I would wake up before school and I would just be like, I hate Edge. Like it would be the first thought I had when I woke up. I remember going to a live show where it was a house show, but we had like seats along the barricade. And we didn't realize we had those seats till we got there. And we were like, oh my God, we're going to be able to high five wrestlers. Like our minds exploded as a kid. And I remember, even though he was a heel, Edge was leaving, slapping hands. And I was like, I will not put my hand out. Like I refused. I drew my line in the sand. I was like, I don't want a high five from him. I'm a John Cena guy.
That's awesome. I always hated them too, but that's because I was like, it was the Hardy Boys 1, the Dudleys 2, and then Edge and Christian with 3.
Well, because they won all the TLC matches too. It was like you wanted to see someone else win eventually.
Yeah, they always had like the long reigns too. Like even like the Hardys would win it sometimes, and they would have it for like 2 weeks before they gave it up
lose
on,
it
like,
on
a random
Raw.
SmackDown. Yeah,
exactly.
It was tough because I was like, doing the Jeff Hardy. I was trying to do swantoms on my trampoline all the time and stuff.
Oh my God, dude. Same thing. When he was like a world title contender, Jeff Hardy, like you said, fighting Triple H and stuff, he was every kid's favorite wrestler. You went to a wrestling show at that point, everyone had the arm sleeves they were selling, the neon green arm sleeves. I bought them, of course. I go in my basement. I'm like, I'm going to do a swanton off my couch. And it was like a you'll shoot your eye out moment. Like, you be careful. You don't try this at home. And I did a swanton off my couch and I landed fine on pillows or whatever. But as my leg swung over, my heel caught the edge of a table on a full front flip. And I remember just lying there for minutes screaming into a pillow, just going, I broke my foot. I'm going to have to go upstairs and tell my mom I broke my foot. And of course I didn't. I was fine. But yeah, it was definite like I shot my eye out. Oh my God, it happened.
Like to me, I remember there was definitely like a couple. Like there was a Survivor Series where it was DX and the Hardy Boys. Like to me, like to have a guy like Jeff Hardy,
it was DX, the Hardys, and CM Punk. It was like an amazing.
Oh, that might have been it. Actually,
crazy like that. Yeah,
I think you're right. I think that is what it was. And like to me, I was like, okay, this makes sense because this is what Survivor Series is. It's just like random guys coming together for these crazy 4 tag eliminations or 5 tag eliminations. So like that made perfect sense to me. But then I'm like I said, I'd already. Probably like 2008, 2009. That's when I started to become like a pay-per-view guy. So then that's when I started seeing it was like, Jeff Hardy's fighting for the World Heavyweight Championship. And then like Rey Mysterio was fighting for the World Heavyweight Championship. I was just like, this is bizarre to me. Like, and I love them. Like they're great wrestlers and they're entertaining. It's just something about like, I don't know, like the storyline of it all. They just, when I think World Heavyweight Champion, I don't think Jeff Hardy. I think like,
Let me ask you this as I don't want to say an old school wrestling fan, but a little bit before my time. Something that I talk to my brother about all the time. Our biggest pet peeve with the modern product is the amount of titles and championships. Do you feel that way?
Definitely.
I did the math recently and I'm all for like doing the equality of titles, men's, women's division or whatever, but you have to like build a bigger women's division because with the women's IC, US, World Heavyweight, WWE Championship, and tag, if you really break it down by numbers, I think like 33% of the women's roster is holding a title. And at that point, it's like, well, then what do the titles mean?
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree with that. I feel like that kind of happened as soon as they did the like the branches, like the split. It was like all of a sudden, now we just gone from 7
I would love it if we had one World Heavyweight champ and he was on both brands, and maybe one month he fights someone from Raw, the next month he has a match with someone from SmackDown, and you could bounce back and forth, keep the matchups fresh, keep the feuds fresh. And it's like, what do the other championships necessarily mean too? I know wrestling, you're not supposed to think about it this much, but like, why is Jay picking Gunther other than the actual feud? Like, shouldn't you, if you win the Royal Rumble, shouldn't you be like, I know Cody's his friend, but I want the best championship. There's
Yeah.
even moments where, wasn't it Theory? Someone cashed their Money in the Bank in on like a US title. It was like, well, what do mid-card titles even mean to these? Like, what does a mid-card title represent? I love the IC title as like, you know, back in the day it was the workhorse title or whatever. But like, why would a wrestler be like, I want the title that doesn't mean you're the best in the world? Like, it doesn't make a lot of sense. So to introduce so many of them and have people be like constantly, I want that title, I want that title, it just takes me out of it.
There's still no hardcore title, right? They never brought the hardcore championship.
No, they tried to bring back the 24/7 championship, which we said for years would have been great if you brought it back in the same manner it was back then. It was a complete flop. It was funny when it was with R-Truth, but like we wanted like utilize social media, have a fucking match in the Barstool office, like not Barstool, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like, if someone's coming in for an interview at ESPN, have someone ambush him, have a match live on Sports Center, like do creative stuff. And they weren't doing anything like that.
It used to be great. Sometimes on like a slow week, say like a slow Raw, they didn't have like a ton of big matches planned or anything like that. There'd be times randomly where we just have like a 10-minute segment. Like all of a sudden, Crash Holly fucking jumped Bradshaw. And now there's 10 guys in the locker room fighting.
And they fought at a circus. So now like a clown just won the 24/7 championship. Someone has to win it off a clown. Or when they're in like I think at one point they're in like the McDonald's playground. Yeah. And they're like, I think someone's on a zip line to hit a drop kick. Like, fun and the current talent roster is so good that they could have an amazing run with something like that, where it's like they all could probably fucking film it themselves on their phones at this point and create good content for us. Like, it just seemed like a total missed opportunity, and the title was so ugly. I wonder if that was a Vince era thing too, because Vince would always approve the ugliest titles, but it just looked like a penny. It was like a weird penny looking thing
with like a bunch of like little like almost like scraps of paper like glue.
That I love. They should have done like they should have broken up the spinner belt that John Cena had and made that, you know, the hardcore 24/7 title or something like that. Instead, they were like, here's a penny.
I do think the idea of having like the champion be on like both brand, I think that is a good idea, especially as far as like the feuds and shit, like you said.
I also think kayfabe, it's like you could explain it as I want the title because the title means more money, which is what it used to be in like the 80s and 90s. Like champions would be like, yeah, the champion makes the most, so that's why you want the title. It could like actually kind of make sense if it's like, yeah, the champion's on both shows, so he makes the most.
There was one like we're going kind of through characters. I got a bunch of them. We just named a few. This is another one I get a lot of slack for. The Undertaker. American Badass. Significantly better than the Phenom.
All right, so you're not going to get a ton of shit from me on this one because I'm a total American Badass stan. This was like my era. My first WrestleMania I ever watched live. So I would like watch VHS tapes. Like my brother we would literally go to Hollywood Video and rent the VHS. Yeah. Even though it's
go to Blockbuster, I'm kind of the whole back.
Yeah. I'm like in the next era, but I have the throwback of like that experience. The first WrestleMania I ever watched live was WrestleMania 19, and that was the American Badass era. So from there, I haven't missed a WrestleMania since. Like every single WrestleMania since 19, I've watched live and Die Hard since then. But I love the American Badass, Big Evil, the ladder match against Jeff Hardy, where it's like, make yourself famous, kid, climb that ladder. Like everything about that, I love. If you're putting it against the Dead Man, I would give the Dead Man the edge personally. But it's a lot closer for me than it is for most people. Like for years after the streak ended, I was like, we should never see the Dead Man again. That should be the end of the Dead Man. If the Undertaker wants to wrestle after the streak is over, he should be the American Badass. And I kind of like the zone he's in now, where like even when he showed up at WrestleMania 40, would it have been nice to see him in the gimmick? Sure. But he's kind of just like the Dead Man biker gimmick now. Like when he ended against AJ Styles even. Like AJ was bringing up Michelle McCool, which is another weird thing with the Undertaker having a wife, but at least it was like, it felt like it was a separate character. It didn't feel like he was just the Dead Man.
That like does too, like in hindsight, does feel like a very 90s, like the Dead Man fit the 90s very, very well. I don't think it carried over, especially because it didn't come back until what, like 2010, 2009, something like that?
No, it came back at WrestleMania 20 against Kane. So that would have been like 04, 05.
Was it that early?
I think so.
All right. So I got my time a little mixed up there, but I just don't feel like the Phenom, I don't think it played as good. Like the outfit and all that. Like the entrance to the ring, that's different. Yeah. The entrance to the ring, that's always going to slap.
Depended on the year, I think. I feel like it depended on the year in the feud with him. Because I look back at WrestleMania 29 against CM Punk, I think was one of his best entrances ever. The zombie hands coming up from the stage. Like it worked then. I remember the first time he came out with the Chuck Liddell mohawk. Everyone was like, "What the fuck is that?" Like, undid the hood and he had short hair. But yeah, like it worked some years and it didn't other years. Like I actually didn't think it worked at all leading into that match against Brock with WrestleMania 30. It was like a bad feud. He wasn't really there for a lot of it. It barely even worked the next year when the Dead Man came back against Bray, and that seemed like that was perfect. That made sense. The weird spooky guy against the weird spooky guy, one of the past, one of the future. Didn't even work there really. It was like weird. That's why I really wanted him to come back as the American Badass there. It's like that would have been fucking cool if Bray thinks he's going in for the spooky guy and he gets the biker.
When we kind of like when the invasion was happening, that was obviously the American Badass time. When him and Kane had both the WWF tag team titles and the WCW tag team titles, and they would come out and they would be like buckled together and they would wear them like around their neck. The coolest goddamn visual. Yeah, it was so fucking sick.
I love that Kane era too, like the half mask sleeveless, like Yep,
that was definitely that's my favorite Kane too. Either that one or like the one sleeve was like him.
The
and
one
X-Pac
sleeve's iconic for sure. Everyone loves Kane and X-Pac. That's the funniest. Every person, every wrestling fan that I know loves Kane and X-Pac, and they weren't together for that long at all. But they're such an iconic, long-standing team. Carabas is a perfect example. Biggest Kane guy in the world. Also loves X-Pac. Me and Carabas got to interview X-Pac together when we did From the Top Rope. And he was like, yeah, I got to tell you.
I watched that. I watched that one.
Yeah. And years later, X-Pac was like, hey, how's Carabas doing? Is he over it? Like, and I was like, no, still not yet. It's still a touchy subject, X-Pac.
He's done a couple of those like the behind the mat and stuff. He's always good. I like listening to X-Pac talk.
Great. Really knowledgeable about the business, and a guy who like you almost don't realize how many eras he made it through when you look at like the original Raw stuff in '93 with the 1-2-3 Kid through like the Invasion era and stuff, and then even beyond TNA and stuff. He had a long career.
Yeah, no, I always liked him too, and obviously part of DX. That was DX,
and he was always just like the lunatic in DX, like crouch chopping his head off.
Yeah, like 77.
Yeah. Always great gear too. I always appreciated X-Pac's singlets were always just like look different from everyone else. The bandana, he always had a very unique look. That was his.
Yeah, I agree. That was like kind of like even like the Road Dogg. He had like the sweatpants, like with the cut off tank top. Like he looked different.
Weird like dreads. Like not even dreads. They were like braided hair. Yeah, cornrows. Yeah.
So actually, you mentioned him a second ago. I was kind of like again like a little bit of a hiatus. And when I was young, it was after DX was Road Dogg and K Quick getting rowdy. And then all of a sudden, like however many years go by, and I was watching a pay-per-view and it was R-Truth, right?
Yeah.
He comes out and I'm looking at my buddy who's been watching it forever too. And I'm like, dude, that guy reminds me of K Quick so much, dude. And he looks over me. He's like, that's because it is K Quick, you moron.
Yeah,
and I was like,
those tattoos way. Exactly like him. R-Truth is, oh my God. What a great. He takes chicken shit and turns it into chicken salad every single time. You give R-Truth any bit on the show, he's going to make you laugh. He's funny with the John Cena. He came out of the Royal Rumble a few years ago and just went for pinfalls. He did John Cena's 5 moves of doom, went for a pinfall. Like, just amazing. Just amazing. I love R-Truth. He's like one of those guys that I feel like the second he retires, he should go into the Hall of Fame. And some people might be like, that sounds crazy. But he truly, like, in longevity, R-Truth is like 50, and he's been wrestling since the Attitude Era, and he can still put on a good match if you need him to.
When he first came out, he was like electric. Like he was so fast and quick. It was just like, oh wow, this guy's got something different to offer than what we're seeing. He was unique,
and he had a quick feud. It was like not quick, maybe a year where he spent as a serious heel, and he had the chops to pull it off. He like beat the hell out of John Cena, started smoking a cig ringside. I was like, is he allowed to smoke a cig on Monday Night Raw right now? Like, he was great.
That's metal.
Yeah.
All right. So I think that was pretty much all I had for notes as far as things I wanted to ask you, talking about some of my favorite guys and all that stuff. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we kind of get into a little bit of movies and TV stuff?
I don't think so. Wrestling wise, I don't think so.
All right, cool. Let's get into this last bit then. So at first I was just going to say like, hey, let's just do like the shortest movie draft ever and pick like 2 or 3 wrestling movies. And then I realized there are basically like 6 wrestling movies.
Yeah, it's only a couple. Yeah.
So I figured we can kind of just, what's your favorite wrestling movie? Like what's one for you?
So like, growing up, the only one I feel like I had was Ready to Rumble. I remember walking into like my brother's room at one point when he had Ready to Rumble on and seeing the triple stack cage. I was never like a WCW kid at all. I didn't have the DVDs or anything to watch back. So it was the first time I'd seen that cage thing. It was just like, that's insane. What's that?
It was cool.
I knew Goldberg. I knew a few of the characters from it. So my brother would describe it to me. Then we get The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke. And I didn't see that when it came out. I was definitely too young for it. But years later, you watch it. And having really spent a lot of time in like independent wrestling locker rooms and stuff over the years in New Jersey, especially where they filmed it, it's mind blowing how accurate that movie is. Like maybe a little extreme with the heart attack stuff, but like the actual feeling of wrestling, mind blowing. And then last year we got the Iron Claw, and I was like, damn, I think The Wrestler, I was like, they can never make a better, sadder wrestling movie than this one. And the Iron Claw came out and was like, I think they might have made a better, sadder wrestling movie. I think it might be the Iron Claw as my favorite wrestling movie. And it's a movie that, like, I don't know if I could go back and rewatch it a ton because it made me a wreck, especially as a brother who loves wrestling. It's like a movie about brothers and losing brothers and stuff. But the way they were able to portray that family, not only for wrestling fans who know the story, but for people like my fiance who she doesn't know a ton about wrestling, especially not to the level of the Von Erichs.
Did you know about that story pretty well?
I did so I knew mostly from the Dark Side of the Ring Vice episode, which was only a few years prior. So like I didn't know it growing up or anything. I knew the Texas Tornado. I had like the little Hasbro Texas Tornado. I didn't know the guy had 1 foot his whole WWF career. Like stuff like that like blew my mind. So sad, so tragic, but so well made. I thought Zac Efron should have got nominated for like an Oscar for that role. Jeremy Allen White was amazing. Harris Dickinson was amazing. It's crazy when you look at the real story. It's like it was actually so sad they cut out one of the brothers' suicides.
Yeah,
they were like, that would be unbelievable in Hollywood if we had that many happen in a row. But for me, I do think it's probably the Iron Claw as far as the best wrestling movie. The one demerit you probably know is the Ric Flair. Is just I don't know what they were thinking with that Ric Flair.
So I liked the Iron Claw. I didn't like the first hour of Iron Claw. I think it's phenomenal. The back half of it is where it trailed off a little bit for me, just because I felt like it almost there was no real like story almost the second half. The second half very much to me felt like, all right, one death, right into the next death, right into the next death, right into the next death, without very much like storytelling in between. Like they go to the one brother who was like, he went and fought in Japan, he came back, and it was just like a sentence. That was it. I was like, all right, we couldn't have given like 5-10 minutes to that, you know what I mean? And kind of broken up just the constant vibe of death after death after death.
Which was a lot.
It was a lot. And I didn't, I knew nothing about this story like at all. I knew it was sad. I know it was filled with tragedy and stuff, but that was basically the extent.
And the dad, watching how the dad treated him was like, oh, shit. And even like when you watch the Vice doc and hear the stories about the dad, it almost seems like he got off easy in the movie, which sounds crazy, but like he seemed like the devil. He was like the worst.
I agree. So you mentioned The Wrestler. I think The Wrestler would probably be my 1-1.
I would say it's neck and neck for me. So I wouldn't argue with that. Like you putting The Wrestler there, I think it's so 1A, 1B.
Yeah, Mickey Rourke is like as good in that movie as anybody can be in any movie. Like he breaks my heart. I also want to cheer my ass off for him. I want to tell him,
dude, when he walks out the Sweet Child of Mine at the end of that movie,
awesome.
Like all time. You know, he got that for free from Axl Rose. Like they didn't have to pay any licensing fee whatsoever. He called Axl Rose up, was like, hey, I would love to use Sweet Child of Mine in this movie. He said, send me the movie and I'll decide. They sent it to Axl. He was like, yeah, that's badass. It's yours free.
Oh, that's sick. I didn't know that. Yeah. That's a wicked cool story.
Super cool. There's also like the Necro Butcher makes an appearance in there. Legendary, independent, hardcore deathmatch wrestler. Chuck Taylor, who would later go on and be in AEW's, makes a quick appearance in the CW scene. And you know what scene from The Wrestler sticks with me the most is the scene where he's working at the deli and he just doesn't want to be there, and and he fucking throws his. Every time I'm at the deli and I see that machine, it's and it makes me cringe. It's not like I love that scene. It's like every time you watch it, you're like, oh my God, don't stick your thumb in there. And he fucking doesn't, walks out with the blood and screaming, takes the hair wrap off. That really stuck with me.
You deal with that old woman beforehand, though. I get it's a little bit more, a little bit
Like,
less,
I
a little
know.
bit more. Then that's the best too, is when he finally just takes like the 2 pieces and just like eats them,
Eats
turns
it.
around,
Yeah.
and she's like, finally.
Yeah. So good. Marissa Tomei, so good.
She's really
Another
good.
interesting, you might know this already. Apparently, when The Wrestler was written, she wasn't a stripper. She was a ballet dancer, an aging ballet dancer. And I forget, is it Aronofsky? Is that the name of the guy that did it?
I think so,
He thought that was maybe a more intriguing story on its own. So he changed the aging ballet dancer to a stripper and wrote Black Swan based out of the aging ballet dancer.
Oh, no way.
So Black
I
Swan
did
was
not
like
know that.
spawned out of The Wrestler.
Aronofsky, yeah, you're right. I did not know
Yeah.
that. That is pretty wild.
Yeah.
That is pretty cool. I didn't know that.
And The
Marissa
Wrestler,
Tomei
I
is
think,
good, man.
is like, it's more rewatchable than the Iron Claw to me, because even though it is obviously very depressing in tone and like everything, it has, like you said, at least a couple of moments that are funny, moments that make you want to cheer.
Definitely.
The stuff with the daughter is like so Jake the Snake when you look at Jake the Snake's life
Yes.
story and his stuff. So you also get a little bit of like, it's not a biopic, but you know who they're talking about there and who they're basing that stuff off of. So I appreciate that. I want a wrestling movie that makes us feel really good about wrestling. I know, like they did the movie about Paige with the Vince
I was just
Vaughn.
gonna say that's probably my second favorite one, is Fighting with
I gotta
Your
be honest,
Family.
I've never seen it, and I've heard good things about it
Man,
too. I've heard
it's
wrestling
great.
fans be like, I just thought the trailers looked so bad that I was like,
it's great.
and I've heard nothing but good things. Actually, Dave Portnoy texted me after he watched it years ago. I remember him being like, have you seen this? It's really good. And I think Florence Pugh's amazing. So like, I don't doubt that she pulled it off. I gotta watch that because, like I said, I want a happy wrestling movie. I would love a wrestling movie about Rey Mysterio. He's the one that when people are like, who would you like to see, you know, a different side of, you can do tragedy with Eddie Guerrero. Obviously that's a tragic part of his life, but the Rey Mysterio story is like an uplifting one. He went from being the tiniest luchador in Mexico to the most famous of all time. And he's like a pop cultural icon down there. You go to Mexico, there's like Rey Mysterio graffiti, and like, he is a legend. I feel like that would be really cool. And it's also like, seems like it'd be an easy ass movie to sell with Rey Mysterio's mask and the posters and shit. Like, what kid wouldn't want to go see a Rey movie?
Yeah, got a huge built-in audience right out of the gate. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Actually, I feel like Rey Mysterio's huge here. Like, Rey Mysterio has been huge. Like a big.
I feel like, especially like my generation, if you were to say name 10 wrestlers, I think Rey would be on that list, not too far after like John Cena.
Yeah, I was gonna say, obviously, like, I'm a little bit older, like I said, and I kind of tailed off a little bit, but those right away, those are the two guys that I went like first in my brain with John Cena and Rey Mysterio.
Yeah.
So that one
another
you should definitely
great guy too. Another like Rey, like people say, don't meet your heroes. I've interviewed him twice now. He is just the best and like so appreciative. You know, I'd bring up like a deep cut from ECW and be like, what were you thinking when you leg dropped Rob Van Dam in that moment? He'd be like, I don't know, but the fact that you brought it up is awesome. And I love, by the way, I don't know how you feel about him. I love Dominic Mysterio. I think he's one of the best heels in the business.
Yeah, I think that whole dynamic is like a good for storytelling kind of thing. I like when they bring like, I mean, the brothers Undertaker and Kane was always a little bit crazy, but I always like that shit when they kind of bring in the family dynamics.
Oh yeah, and just
adds
like the fact that they tried to bring Dom in as like, he almost felt like Muppet Baby Ray, but without a mask, so he's less cool. You know, it's just like, oh, he's a Mysterio. They tried to get everyone to cheer him. It was kind of like whatever. And then Dominic realized in his head, like, if I go heel and lean into all of Eddie Guerrero's old traits, he's got the mullet, he's got the mustache, he's doing the Three Amigos. Like, oh my God, it's brilliant. Every time he comes out, I'm like, he's going to get the most heat out of everyone on the show all night. I wouldn't even be opposed to like putting money in the bank on someone like him, where you have his music hit and, you know, every time where it's, is he not going to cash it in? Is he whatever? He will get so much heat. Someone like him or Logan Paul. I know people hate Logan Paul, but like, you got to put that on a shithead heel who's going to generate that reaction of like, no, please.
He's way better. Way better than I thought he would be as far as like in the ring. Like, he's good in the ring.
He's like very competent. He could put on a great match with pretty much anyone. And I don't think he's putting together the matches or anything, but he's a competent enough wrestler for anyone to get a good match out of him. Definitely.
Yeah, I think so too. Definitely check out the Fighting with My Family one. They kind of like market it like as if like The Rock is like a big character in the movie. He's only got 2 scenes. They are like they might be the two best scenes in the movie, possibly.
Oh yeah.
But he's not. It's not like he's in it for like. He's not.
I
Even in
remember
it
the
for
one
a
from the
quarter of the movie.
trailer. I remember the one where he kind of like bumps into them backstage and gives them advice, like her
That's
and her brother, right?
Probably the best scene of the movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
They meet, and then the brother asks basically like, how do we win over the crowd? And the Rock shows him how to win over the crowd.
And that's like, it doesn't surprise me that that's the best, because he's not even acting then. At that point,
Right.
just like talk about your life experience, dude.
Yeah, and I think that was the first thing I saw Florence Pugh in. It was either that or Midsummer, but I think that was before Midsummer.
Yeah, that was definitely early for her, because I remember when they cast her also being like, maybe I saw her in like a young adult teen movie or some sort, but I didn't really know who she was. And now I feel like she's one of the biggest actresses in Hollywood.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. She's great. She was really good in this movie too. And then Vince Vaughn, different kind of role for him, because he's like just like a real like asshole, and he's like kind of.
Isn't he the coach of the Performance Center?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I mean, I haven't seen the movie, so I can't like really speak on this, but if I had to guess, if he's an asshole Performance Center coach, he'd probably be based on like Bill DeMott, who at the time got
like
fired for being like the worst.
Yeah, and like I said, it's dry too, like just very un-Vince Vaughn. Like it's not even like there's like a scene here and there where he kind of like shows the Vince Vaughn like with like a little joke or something. Like it's very much the whole time. It's just kind of like kind of a douche. Like,
yeah, I gotta see it. That's another thing like Daredevil, where it's like I should have seen it when it came out, and now I've just put it off so long.
So the other one I really wanted to mention isn't exactly like as big of like wrestling in the ring, but it's very tied heavily to wrestling and hits home really very much for me is Peanut Butter Falcon.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. So I liked that movie a lot. I gotta admit, the wrestling stuff at the end,
tough,
almost ruined the movie for me.
Yeah.
When the Jake the Snake is like deciding in the ring, never mind, we're not doing this wrestling thing. We're in an actual fight.
Yeah.
And then they had it took me out of the movie in such a way where I was like, oh no, I don't know if the person that wrote this movie has ever heard of professional wrestling beyond like a broad strokes level.
Yeah. So
but great movie before that. Like everything about that movie I thought was pretty great.
Yeah. So like I said, that hit home because actually, you know what's funny? The house I live in is my grandmother's old home. This was his bedroom, but my mom is a twin. My uncle was born with Down syndrome. And dude, he is he's still alive, but he's really, really, really slowed down. He was the biggest fucking wrestling fan on the planet, Robbie.
Really?
Like you could have asked this guy like anything, like who fought in this WrestleMania? What was this guy's finishing move? Who did that? What was their entrance song? And he could tell you like that, like, oh no, just boom. And he like, my dad would always kind of like try to like wrestle around with him and stuff. And then they would start at first for like, 30 seconds. And then my uncle would kind of be like, all right, motherfucker. Like, and then he's like starting to try to move my dad around. My dad's like, Robbie, chill out, man. So it was very cool to get a movie. Yeah, it was cool to get a movie like that. I guess it really, really hit home.
I mean, the story of him wanting to meet his idol, I forget the name of the wrestlers, like the almost Hulk Hogan prototype of like the American wrestler. That I loved so much. And was it Efron and Dakota Johnson? Was she the girl in that?
Shia LaBeouf. Yeah.
Oh, it was Shia and Dakota Johnson. Yeah. I thought both of them were great in it too.
They were. Yeah. I love Shia. Is actually one of my favorites. He's always good. And I thought that was
a movie that genuinely I watched it being like, I love this movie. And then when the end happened, it put such a sour taste in my mouth that I didn't really go back to it. But like, it's such a diehard wrestling fan nitpick thing where it's like, if you're not a wrestling fan, you watch that movie, I don't think you have any issue with the ending. You're like, oh, that's like an interesting twist or whatever. But yeah, it was just like a personal nitpick I couldn't get over, I guess.
The part with Shia is like, he's basically like, they're coming up with his ring name and they're coming up with his gimmick that's awesome. Like Shia helps him make the costume and he's got the wings.
Yes.
That's awesome. Great. Yeah. Great movie. So I would say that was probably my Iron Claw, man. I don't like it's not that I didn't like it because I do like it. Maybe it's because it is so depressing. Like I just put that one
so depressing
on the list.
But there's those moments like when they hit fucking Tom Sawyer and they have that montage of them working out and them coming out together. I thought that was great. I thought the in-ring wrestling stuff was good in it too. And I love the explanation he gives to his girlfriend when he meets her for the first time. She's like, isn't it fake? And he like really like breaks it down on a level of like, no, but this is why you would actually want a title. And I feel like that's the perfect thing to like send to a non-wrestling fan when they give you the questions that always come up with, isn't it fake? Why do you care about it like that? And you go into the like, well, don't you care about Game of Thrones? Isn't that fake? And it's so much easier to just send them that clip from the Iron Claw now and be like, just watch this. You'll get it after this.
There's a lot of that same like how real is wrestling in the Fighting with My Family movie.
Oh yeah,
it is like the whole family is heavily like invested. Like the parents are like old wrestlers and all that. So like whenever they're like in a conversation with, say, like I think like the brothers, they're like meeting his fiance's family, and they're very buttoned up people. And then you have like two former wrestlers go in there,
hooligans, British hooligans.
Exactly. Yes. They got the nose piercings, the mohawks, the dyed hair. They're swearing this way and the other thing. It's a very, very funny dynamic.
Yeah.
I'm interested to, when you check that one out, you're going to have to, send me a DM.
And there's a new one coming out in like 2 weeks, actually. It's called Queen of the Ring. And I haven't heard a ton about it, to be honest. I just saw the trailer like a few weeks ago when I went to see the Bob Dylan movie. But it's a true story biopic about Mildred Burke, who is like one of the first women to wrestle in the 1930s, I believe. And I don't know a ton about Mildred Burke's story. I've heard the name Mildred Burke as a wrestling fan, but I don't know what to think about it. It's gotten like a bunch of film festival selections or whatever. I don't know how much credence to put into those. I talked to Clemmer about it, and we both agreed like the fact that it's not being released by a real studio is a little worrisome.
Yeah. This woman's in great shape, I'll tell you that.
Yeah,
she looks like a woman's wrestler, man. Holy shit.
She's from the main actress is from Arrow. She was in Arrow for a long time.
I never watched
that. It's got a decent cast. Walton Goggins is in it.
Love him.
Karen from Daredevil has a small role, I believe, in it.
Yeah.
I'll definitely.
This is the first time that I've heard about
this. I'm curious about it at this point.
Yeah. Did you ever check out? I wanted to watch it. I just never got around to it. It's kind of like what you were saying earlier. I just kept putting it at the back of my list, but it was is it Heels? I think it was called.
Yes. Heels is good. I think you would like it. Yeah, it is. It's like interesting. They do kind of try to like Hollywoodify some things.
Okay.
But it gives you the family vibe, the independent wrestling vibe, but also it makes it feel like a territory in the old school days. It's written by a guy that we've had on the show before. It's written by the guy that wrote Loki season 1 and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. His name's Michael Waldron.
Oh yeah, yes.
He wrote and created Heels, and it's got Stephen Amell in the lead, and he's a guy who's came in and done matches in WWE and AEW. So it's got like legit wrestling roots and stuff. It's definitely, I would recommend it. I mean, CM Punk is in it before he returned to wrestling. Yeah. He plays this like absolute carny, like old school wrestler who's like kind of a scumbag. He's got like a rat tail. It's great.
I was never a CM Punk guy. I always hated it. I just wanted to see him lose every match. Yeah, I hated him.
From the first day he debuted in ECW, I was in on him. The tattoos, the punk rock vibe, I was in on that.
I'll say, I know Carabas was a big CM Punk guy too.
Still is.
Yeah,
I think he's got a CM Punk tattoo.
All right. I was gonna say
he's got like lyrics to his first theme.
All right, yeah, that sounds about right. That sounds like a Jared move.
Yeah.
I
got a wrestling tattoo I haven't brought up. I have a turnbuckle.
Oh hell yeah!
Because I used to set up rings using turnbuckles and stuff.
No shit. You had quite a few jobs, huh?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't even call it a job. It was when I was in high school. I thought I was going to be a wrestler when I grew up. So I wanted to put my foot in the door, break into the business a little bit. So I would just go to all the local independent companies and offer to do whatever I could for free. So I would, grab the planks and help set up the ring at the beginning of the night, do the turnbuckles, break down at the end of the night. I'd do the spotlight during the show. And I met so many connections and friends through doing that for a few years.
That's wicked cool. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, really, really fun.
The Kevin Owens merch though, that's cool too. That's all.
Yeah, that was my thing for a long time. I would do merch and gear. That's how I met Cody Rhodes for the first time. That's how I met the Young Bucks. I used to design like Young Bucks stuff they would wear to the Tokyo Dome. So many Ring of Honor wrestlers. I mean, like truly like dozens and dozens of wrestlers. Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, Candice LeRae, a lot of the people that are like in WWE now, which is crazy and surreal and cool.
Yeah. And then you end up on a golf podcast.
And exactly. Yeah. I was on a golf podcast, not knowing anything about golf. Still, like it pisses people off that I'm like, yeah, I've been on 2 golf courses my whole life. One was like a shitty one in South Jersey, Avalon, for like a Barstool It was like a Barstool Golf weekend that Smitty would put together before the Barstool Classic or Rigs was a thing. And Augusta National is my second. Haven't been to one since, and I think I hit the peak, so maybe I shouldn't go to
kidding.
one.
Yeah, that's actually a good call. Just leave it there. That's a good call. All right. I think that's all I got from the movies and TV stuff too. So I'm pretty sure that's everything I got, Rob. Unless you have anything you want to add, buddy.
I don't think so. I think we covered a lot. This was fun. I enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, no, this is great. I appreciate you coming on again.
Of course.
If something comes, we'll have to try to do it again down the line at some point.
Yeah.
All right.
Maybe another wrestling movie crossover. So obviously, Queen of the Ring isn't going to be a big.
Yeah, that's true. That's
maybe
we have a couple of big pay-per-views coming up soon too.
True.
Elimination Chamber is this weekend, right? And then WrestleMania is like a little over a month away.
19th and 20th, or 20th and 21st. Yeah.
All right. So almost 2 months away.
And I think I'm going out there for it again this year.
Are you?
That should be fun. Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
Vegas is my least favorite place in the world to go because covering UFC at Barstool, I go there all the time. I've been to Vegas probably like 16, 17 times in the last 8 years, and I don't gamble or drink. It's just not. It's not the spot for me.
Yeah, I've been a few times. It's not necessarily my favorite place either.
Yeah, they got.
Don't get me wrong.
So it is what it is.
That's big. Yeah, I was just saying, I love to smoke and drink, but I prefer to do it in a rural area. Give me like the mountains, something like that.
I like staying off strip. Like it's convenient to stay on strip if I got to be near an arena. But when we were owned by Penn, they own the M, which is way off strip, 20 minutes off strip. And I liked that. I like being a little away from the noise.
Yeah, that's probably a good call. I can see that. I've only always been like, I think I did MGM both times, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, that's the closest to the T-Mobile arena now. So it's like, I'm usually in that area.
Yeah. I saw Blink-182 live there once. That was fucking awesome.
That was sick. Really what like the recent or back in the day?
That was Skiba. That was
gotcha. Oh, when they were doing their residency?
What, it wasn't the residency. They were headlining one of those like festival things.
Gotcha.
But we just happened to be there at the right time, and me and my buddy are huge Blink fans. I've seen him like 5 or 6 times, and he's seen him by like 4 or 5 times. But they were playing out there, and that was the first time I saw them with Skiba, and it was definitely different. But they put on a great show. I mean, it's not like when Tom's there, but they were always, every time I've seen them, they're great. So
I'm a huge Blink fan, always have been. From like that was one of the first bands my brother showed me. And before I saw Blink-182 on the reunion tour with Tom, just recently, a few years ago, I had purchased tickets to see them 5 times, and 5 times the show got canceled for one reason or another, or something happened where it got in the way of me seeing them. One was like Travis tonsillitis.
I was just going to say, that was the first one I was going to say.
One was like Tom, I think, leaving the band, like canceled the tour. One was like Mark had to cancel the tour for whatever. I don't think it was before he got diagnosed with cancer, but they canceled. Actually, it was the night that we played House of Blues. I think they were supposed to play Boston, wound up canceling that night. It was like, there were so many things that at one point I was offered like a ticket to an intimate Spotify show with Skiba. It was going to be like intimate 9 songs they were playing for 9, the album. And like the last second, I was going to be a +1 for someone. They were like, I'm sick, I can't go. It was like so many times, but I feel like it worked out for the best to see them for the first time with Tom on the reunion tour. It was like, all right, this is the peak of how I'm going to see them.
Yeah, it's definitely different when Tom is there. There's a different energy, there's a different vibe. Like I said, it was nothing wrong with Skiba. He was very, very he was totally fine.
Respect. Like he kept the band alive, touring for years. I don't even hate those. I'm not a huge 9 fan, but like California, I think is a good album.
California's a good album. Yeah.
I'm like totally fine with that. But like when you say Blink-182, like Tom is Blink. Tom and Mark, like you need the 3 of them.
Yeah. As soon as you started like that, the show's getting canceled right away. I knew you were going to go with Travis because I missed that show because of Travis too.
And we were pissed at the time. We were just like, "You're a drummer. You don't need your tonsils, brother." They wound up replacing it. Was a festival, and it was supposed to be Blink-182 right into the Foo Fighters on the beach, which is like it was an amazing lineup. And they wound up canceling, and the replacement was My Chemical Romance, and it was their final show before they broke up.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
And as a Jersey kid, I was okay with that. I was okay with MCR coming in. I'm way bigger Blink fan, though.
Yeah. No, I liked MCR too, but yeah, Blink's my number 1. They're my favorite band of all time. But all right, like I said, man, this was a great talk. Thanks a lot for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. As always, everybody, thank you guys very much for tuning in. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. We will talk to you all soon. And as always, happy watching.